Oh, it's definitely a rivalry game. Every time they play Washington, they're gonna bring it. You always have a tough defense. Root around that D line. We built ourselves off the O line. They built themselves on a D line, and so it's always gonna be a good matchup.
It is Flex Friday. We have plenty of start flex players to go through. And
you don't actually need muscles to flex, right?
No.
You can this is what I'm doing. I have huge muscles. It's the shirt's loose. Trust me.
Next time you put a little padding in there.
I'll never forget. One time, I used to work with Merrill Hodge, former NFL running back. Oh, yeah. Merrill's awesome, and Merrill at ESPN used to have these he always had the tightest shirts, and he had the big tie. He had the knot in the tie. Yeah. And he always looked great. Merrill looked great. And I remember one time, this is my first week or so at ESPN or something like that. Maybe I've been there a month, and I'm like, Merrill, man, my shirt's always baggy and everything like that. I'm like, Merrill, how do you get your shirt so tight? You always look so good on air. How do you get your shirt so tight like that? And he just looks at me, he's like, do a couple bench presses, son. Do a couple bench presses. And he walks off. And I'm just like, all right, fair enough.
Fair enough.
Exactly. Fair enough. You're a former NFL running back, and I'm not. I got it. Understood. And I was just like, all right, baggy shirts for me here on out.
Yeah, you passed on the bench presses.
I'll never forget that. But for the record, by the way, I love Merrill Hodge. The sweetest guy. He's a good friend. He's awesome. But anyway.
And endless tips for Flex Friday,
no
which
doubt.
is also what we need you for right now. So let's start your Commanders at Dallas this week. We're starting with Dallas. This backfield, we talk about it nonstop. Ezekiel Elliott, obviously not a flex player, higher upside than that. But with him and Tony Pollard, what are your expectations right now? As Pollard has not been used in the pass game as much as we had hoped preseason.
Yeah, I mean, to me, my concern here is with Pollard, 2 or fewer targets in 2 of the 3 games, right? Ezekiel Elliott actually ran twice as many routes in week 3. He's lined up wider in the slot for only 20 plays so far this season, and candidly, I think they're going to be up in this game. Cowboys are significant favorites in this game. My Commanders can't stop anyone. They're brutal. And so game script doesn't look like, if there was a week for Pollard to get involved in the passing game, doesn't feel like this is it, especially given the fact that there's a chance that we get Michael Gallup back, and we hope Dalton Schultz is back as well. So for me, I have him as running back 28, Pollard. I think he's a low-end flex. And I think that both with him and Zeke, they're both touchdown-dependent flexes. And I would prefer Ezekiel Elliott in this one. He comes in as running back 16 for me, more of a touchdown-dependent RB2, because we feel like the volume here with Ezekiel Elliott, we expect that, again, in positive game script, because Zeke is getting work. He's had at least 16 touches each of the last 2 weeks, right? I mean, he's also not being involved in the passing game, but if they get in close, who do you expect to score the touchdown? It's Ezekiel Elliott. And they should be up in this game.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it at the end there with Zeke and his lack of involvement in the passing game. That's the surprising thing, is that he had 77 receptions in 2018. This year he's got 3 for -5 yards. Yeah. That's less than 0.
Wow.
That's bad. Brett Easton Ellis and Ezekiel Elliott, less than 0.
Less than 0. Well
so
done.
I think that both of these running backs are just kind of capped by their situation at the moment, and yet they're both flex guys, and you just kind of hope that you guess right and one of them gets in the end zone or goes off.
And like I said, I prefer Ezekiel Elliott by a significant margin. Again, running back 16, Pollard I have as 28. I think Zeke is sort of settled in as kind of more of a touchdown-dependent RB2, but the volume is there, and I think there's a pretty good chance he gets into the end zone against my pathetic Washington Commanders.
Well, staying right with those.
Washington Commanders defense. My pathetic Washington Commanders defense.
So let's talk about the offense then. Yeah. Antonio Gibson, who you have closely ranked to Zeke, and of course Terry McLaurin, who it's kind of been an odd season for him so far in terms of volume. Gibson and McLaurin, are they both flex worthy? I would assume yes, but how high end can they be?
I have Gibson at 27, and he makes me nervous, right?
Okay.
Every week since week 1, his touches and targets have declined. He's been under 60 rushing yards in all 3 games this season. And you saw last week when they were getting blown up by Philadelphia, J.D. McKissick actually, was the more productive running back. He was on the field more. They were using more in the passing game. And I think that's what happens here. Again, you just sort of have to, how do you think this game plays out here? Washington, they're underdogs in this game, more than a field goal underdogs in this game. And so Gibson makes me nervous. I think he is a low floor flex. I have him at running back 27. I'm more optimistic about Terry McLaurin. Again, We expect him to be passing a ton. He's had 100% route participation among all wide receivers, 75 yards or a touchdown in all 3 games so far this season. They're going to be throwing a lot. Yes, he'll see some Trayvon Diggs, but as we've talked about with Diggs is both really good and also takes a lot of chances, right? And so that's all you need is one, is like he tries to jump a route a little bit too early and they catch him flat-footed. McLaurin has played well against Dallas over his career when he's had worse quarterback play and less target competition, but also more defensive attention. So given given Curtis Samuel, given John Dotson, I think he'll find himself in single coverage some this game, and they'll take advantage of that. McLaurin's wide receiver 24 for me. Generally, if you've been starting him so far this week, I'm starting him again.
Yeah, I mean, Carson Wentz was sacked 9 times against the Eagles, so good news.
Only 9?
Micah Parsons is in town. He's not very good, so I'm sure Carson Wentz will be fine there. But look, the one thing about Dallas last year is that they were really vulnerable to deep passes, largely because of trick-or-treat Trayvon Diggs. But this year they've kind of fixed that up a little bit. And it's only a 3-game sample, so we'll see what happens there. But I do think you can run on the Cowboys. The Bucs ran on them effectively. Saquon, who is a different kind of player to Antonio Gibson, clearly, but still the Giants ran effectively. So I would look at Antonio Gibson as maybe the guy over McLaurin. But yeah, I wouldn't be too optimistic about the Commanders.
I agree. You can absolutely run on Dallas. They're 23rd against the run over the last 3 weeks. My concern is like, do they have to abandon the run?
Yep.
Because overall it's a really good defense. To your point, Carson Wentz has been a turnover machine so far this year, even in the good games. Like even in the game when they won against Jacksonville, he still threw 2 awful interceptions as well. And so I'm just worried, right? Again, and a lot of those 9 sacks from last week were on Carson Wentz.
Yep.
And so I think they're going to tee off on him, and my fear is that maybe there's an easy defensive touchdown. I like the Cowboys defense quite a bit this week, and that they bail on establishing the run, as it were, as you just saw some production there from Terry McLaurin on your screen. Terry McScorin, as I like to call him. But fair enough. I think what you're saying is you think Gibson is a viable flex. I agree with you that he's a viable flex, but I also think there's less of a floor there than most starting running backs, because they could easily abandon the run pretty quickly and just go all passing with McKissick.
Yeah, I just think Cooper Rush probably not going to run away with the game into a 3-touchdown lead or anything like that. So hopefully it is close enough that they can still run the ball, but it could fall out completely. And also, Brian Robinson might be back pretty soon, so Antonio Gibson wants to play pretty well this week.
Yeah, fair enough.
All right, battle of the MVP candidates. The Bills 3-point favorites going to Baltimore. Let's start right there with the Bills. Motor Singletary, you have him as RB24 going into Week 4. How do you like him as a flex play this week?
I like him a lot. I have Singletary pretty high this week, right? I'm at 24, and so my take is that last week we saw him get it used in the passing game in a significant way. Career highs in targets and receptions last week, played on nearly 75% of the snaps. And so in close games, in games in which they need to, as you see it here on your screen, last week, 9 rushing attempts, 13 rushing yards, okay, whatever. But 9 receptions and 78 receiving yards. He also scores the touchdown through the air. 24.1 fantasy points against the Dolphins. That was a game in which, now, the Bills threw it 60 times in that game, right? So, and we don't expect that kind of volume. But the fact is that was the first game where the Bills were tested and where they had to try to move the ball. And so Devin Singletary was a big part of the passing game. Ravens allow 5 yards per carry to opposing running backs. They've given up the 3rd most receptions to opposing running backs so far this year. We expect the Ravens to be in this game. This one to be a close one, especially when you consider how beat up the Bills' secondary is. So I think the Ravens are able to move the ball here. And so they're going to have to throw, especially, by the way, we got news just before the show that Gabe Davis re-injured the ankle. He is questionable for this game. We don't know if he's going to be available or not, but if Gabe Davis is not out there or at less than 100%, it gives even more credence to the idea that Singletary used more in the passing attack.
Yeah, I think that everything points to a big Devin Singletary game. I think that the Ravens, they give up an incredible amount of receptions to running backs, and also
their
they have the
linebackers
efficiency.
are vulnerable.
Very vulnerable. And also the total for this game is 51, which is the highest of the week. So there's going to be a lot of yards and a lot of touchdowns to be found.
Yep.
All right, staying with the Bills here, and we talked about Gabe Davis already. That's just up in the air. But Dawson Knox, it's been a disappointing year for those that drafted Dawson Knox. Right now, you have him as tight end 14. At what point is he borderline just not trustworthy as a playable tight end option?
It's now.
We're here, right?
We're here.
Yeah.
We're here. You are here.
Sunk
it's
cost. Sunk cost.
Sunk cost. The big maps, like where you're in like a big space and you're looking at a map, like you are here. We need that for this table, by the way, just so you can find yourself in this table. Just like if we could get that for Monday, just a big map of the table and like little red dots, so we each know where we are in respect to each other. But we're there with Dawson Knox as well in terms of like basically a touchdown dependent tight end too. He's my tight end 14 for the week. He's had 11 targets in 3 games. Like 11 targets is nice for 1 game, but 11 targets over 3 games, it's not ideal. He's been held to under 45 yards in every single game, and it's not like the Bills' offense has struggled. They've been putting up points left and right. I mean, again, think about this. They threw it 60 times last week. And yet Dawson Knox was tight end 22 in week 3. And so he's touchdown dependent. That's what you're hoping for. He's not even a top 22 tight end this year on a points per game basis. He is nothing. He is touchdown dependent. Now, again, if you're in that range, better hit. You'd rather the tight end that's playing for Josh Allen, a team that we think is going to score a lot of points in a game, to Jay's point, that has a very high over/under. But that's what he is. He's a touchdown dependent tight end too that can easily get you 4.5 points.
9 games in a row he has in top 5 targets. There's just no ceiling there. It's incredible that Josh Allen has a chance to throw for near 6,000 yards this year, and Dawson Knox still isn't going to be viable. He's just in that dead zone with Albert O and Cole Kmet and these guys who you just don't really want any part of unless you have to.
Yeah, it seems like they paid him because they love his blocking and there's receiving upside that they don't need to rely on.
Yeah, listen, he had a great year last year, but it was all very touchdown influenced, right? And so I wouldn't put him in the category of Cole Kmet. Because Dawson Knox has caught a passes here, right?
Cole Kmet got a couple last week.
It's a unique category.
He's building. Two catches, I want to say 20 yards.
One's on the field with Josh Allen, one's on the field with Justin Fields.
Sure.
But anyway, we both agree here is that starting Dawson Knox this week is not for the faint of heart. That's what you're hoping for a touchdown.
I think the Ravens side of this game is much more interesting because their offense is Lamar Jackson, and then everything else is this mystery. So when you look at Rashad Bateman, who's kind of been absent for 2 of the 3 games in terms of targets, and then J.K. Dobbins, who's still working his way back, do you even play these guys at this point, or you're just constantly waiting and seeing with the Baltimore offense?
I'm playing Rashad Bateman. Again, he's lower for me, right, than I think I would like. But again, high over-under in this game. We expect a lot of points to be scored. To your point about Lamar Jackson, you think about that Bills secondary, right? Micah Hyde not going to play in this one, right? Tre'Davious White still on the physically unable to perform list. Like it's a secondary that's playing above expectations, but it is still beat
rookies
up. And so, this is a guy in Rashad Bateman who leads the NFL in yards per reception. He's got a 17.5 average depth of target. Like they're chucking it deep. So Bateman's one of those guys that all he needs is one play. In the game with a over-under, you said it's 51.5 now. It's up to 51.5. Yeah, I'm willing to take a chance on Bateman as a wide receiver 3.
Jay, do you think this lives up to shootout expectations?
I think it will. I just think Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, they're just unsolvable. They're both defense agnostic guys. It doesn't matter the opposing defense because they're just too good. I do think with Rashad Bateman, there's a little bit of a concern. He's only got 8 catches on the season. He is boom or bust, and he's 100%. Relied on 75-yard house call against the Dolphins, the 55-yard bomb against the Jets.
Yeah, big plays. Two big plays.
I mean, he makes those plays. That's a part of the Rashad Bateman experience, but at the same time, it would be nice if he could, have more than 8 catches in 3 games.
There's no question about it. There is not a floor. I mean, this is why we're talking about him on Flex Friday. You guys don't need us to sit here and be like, start Josh Allen. You know who I love this week is Lamar Jackson. Mark Andrews should be in your lineup. You don't need us doing that. So we're taking on the tough questions. We're taking on a tough table and a tough questions. That's what we're doing right here. That's right. A lot of you know what? It'd be easy. It'd be easy to be at a comfortable table and just talk about the quarterbacks and the obvious stars, but not us at the happy hour. No. That's why we drink heavily, because we are going to make the tough calls, right? We're like, all right, fine. Drink up and let's go. Bottoms up, baby. That's right.
All right. Tough calls. Chargers at Texans.
Yeah,
plenty of tough calls
flex.
in this game.
Flex Friday.
This is the Flex Friday game.
So again, Bateman, to your point, it depends on. I'll just talk philosophy for 1 second before we move on. I just want to say that I feel like that it depends when you get into your flex. What do you need? right? Are you down big? Did you face T. Higgins, and Joe Burrow from Thursday night? Are you down big, or you face Kamara as well, and you're and he has a big game Sunday morning, and you're I got to swing for the fences. Bateman's more of a play, but if you have T. Higgins and you're up big or something like that, you started Higgins and you played against a guy who has Tua, and hit Tua and Waddle, and you're I'm feeling pretty good. I want more of a floor play at my flex. Maybe you pivot somewhere else. So
I love when Matthew talks philosophy, goes into Friedrich Berry mode, Plato Berry.
It's 1,000%, right? I'm gonna be naked and and sitting here on the chair next segment.
Well, you can spread out on the table.
The philosopher. What's that? You know what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about.
Statue.
The name escapes me, but I think everyone could visualize it right now.
What is it? So research will get on that. I didn't pay attention to that class, but I'm merely saying that I think that your lineup decisions, especially at the flex spot, depend a lot on your matchup, what has happened prior to you making that choice. So in this game, we'll have two games. We'll have the Thursday game and the Sunday morning game. So anyway.
All right, what everybody's been waiting for, Chargers at Texans. Justin Herbert fully cleared now, which is a great sign for the Chargers offense. But I think some of the big questions start with Houston. Dameon Pierce coming in as RB25 for you for the summer. Obvious flex upside here, but is it touchdown dependent with Pierce for you?
I don't think so. I mean, again, he's just getting so much volume, right? There's been 38 running back carries for the Houston Texans over the last 2 weeks, and he's seen 35 of them. The concern here, if there is one concern, that is that they could get down big to the Chargers. They haven't really been tested by a good offense yet, the Texans defense, right? I mean, they played they played the Colts, and they played the Broncos and
the Bears
and the Bears, right? So they haven't been tested. So if they're down big, Pierce, who has not had any passing game involvement so far this year, could get phased out. So much as we talked about with Antonio Gibson earlier in the show, the concern here is, does Dameon Pierce, again, I think he's a viable flex, but there is less of a floor here than you might expect for a starting running back.
Yeah, he's a bit of a conundrum because he's getting the volume, and that's exactly what you want. And he's really good, but at the same time, just game script is just going to kill him week after week. I mean, last year the Texans had 8 rushing touchdowns. Yeah. They ran for 3.4 yards per carry. They're averaging 83 yards a game. There's just nothing there. And the Chargers are now 6-point favorites.
All right, looking over on the Chargers side, Mike Williams has 15 yards or less in 2 of the 3 games this year. Week 1 was the dud. Week 2 was the bounce back. Week 3, the Mike Williams roller coaster. How do you play it? Because you drafted him to play him.
You just got to start him.
Yeah.
Mike Williams, you cannot guess, this is a Mike Williams week, this isn't.
No,
with Mike Williams, it's just,
insane.
I'm in or I'm out. And so I think if you've drafted him, I think you need to be in. This should be a good game against the Texans. I'm in.
Yeah, I think the one concern about the Chargers overall now is that this offensive line, which is looking much improved, now it's back to the Phil Rivers days.
Decimated again.
Rashawn Slater, yeah.
He's done. He's one of the best offensive linemen in the league. The Storm Norton show, which apparently isn't coming, it's not being renewed for season 2 because he's not even going to play. They've benched Storm Norton. They've benched the guy behind Rashawn Slater because he was so bad. So that is just one concern. And then obviously Herbert's ribs too, but you have to play Mike Williams.
But worth noting, no Jalen Guyton in this game.
Yep.
We don't expect Keenan Allen to play, so maybe more of a narrow target tree for the pass catchers like Mike Williams, like Josh Palmer, like Gerald Everett.
Yeah, without Keenan Allen, do you go back to Josh Palmer again?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah. When Keenan Allen's out, you start Josh Palmer, especially in a favorable matchup. No injury designation for Justin Herbert. We know he's going to be in the flak jacket. We know he's going to be in pain. But the fact is, he's not even listed as probable or questionable. No injury designation for Herbert, who has practiced all week. Hopefully he'll be a little bit better against the Texans.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we're back, what we're watching for in Week 4. Plenty of Jets, Bucks, Chiefs, and the Niners.
I'm still in on Gerald Everett, too, by the way. Start him.
Always.